Hello, you guys, and today I'm going to be reading Would You Like to Know About Forever by Lord Brony 2040. Now, this is a little bit different than all of the stories I've read before. This one doesn't have cover art, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to look up some fan art and I'll credit it in the description. Anyways, here is the description. In the aftermath of Twilight's kingdom, Celestia wonders if she should tell Twilight and her friends about something concerning their lives, like the fact that they're not going to end. With a chapter entitled The Question. Celestia sat in her personal chambers as she watched the scene play out before her on the mystical window into the past. Displayed upon it, 6 mares, the princess's former student and her 5 friends, were struck by beams of light shooting out from the Tree of Harmony in the cavern. The light consumed the little ponies before their essences were drawn into the jeweled box, and 6 spheres of colorful light shot out to reveal that the bears had been reborn as something never before seen in Equestria. While the sight of it was magical and a boon to all of Equestria, Celestia's heart could not help but ache for the young ones that had yet to realize their fate. A fate that would one day force them to watch their families grow old and die, while they remained forever untouched by time. She had checked up on all of them after everything had died down, visiting the little ponies for the past few days after their initial meeting to see how each of them was adjusting to the changes brought about by the defeat of the latest threat to Equestria. While her concern over any problems the latest adjustment of their lives had caused had been genuine, Celestia had also wanted to see if any of them had noticed that the bodies they now possessed were any different from the old ones. Well, aside from the power to call on a magic to make them look more colorful and crush gods beneath their hooves, like bugs, that is. Thankfully, none of them had become aware that the shells they now wore were any different from their previous bodies, aside from some old injuries or aches that no longer bothered them. None of them had noticed that they had been altered at all. Even Twilight had failed to grasp that her new Alicorn body was a step beyond what she had been elevated to before the harmonic event. Unfortunately, their lack of knowledge about the situation meant Celestia was faced with a difficult choice. She could let them remain blissfully ignorant to their newly gained immortality, or tell them of what had transpired, and offer her advice on how to cope with the idea of forever. Celestia knew from personal experience that the first path had its appeal, as well as its disadvantages. After all, she and Luna had not been aware of their own immortality until her friends began to gray while the sisters remained ever young and ever powerful. It had caused a great deal of heartache, jealousy, and the loss of more than one friendship when all the ponies around Celestia and Luna were dragged down by time, and the sisters were not. Words had been exchanged in anger that still brought pain to Celestia's heart, despite the fact that the ponies who said them had long since turned to dust. She still wondered what would have been different had she known what was to transpire all those years ago. If she had come into the world knowing that she would never leave it through the fault of age, would she have bothered making friends at all, or simply ignored the slights that became tearful arguments in order to not waste time with the ones she loved? It was a question she would never find an answer to, and something she need not worry about at the moment. She had to focus on the efforts her decision would bring. There would be the change in perspective that came with the knowledge of immortality. It would happen to them now, or 40 years down the line, when they noticed the lack of slowing down, gray hairs, and the 100 other things that came with bodies that were supposed to be over the hill. But it would come all the same in time. Either way, Celestia would at least be there to help them cope with a change in that regard. She would be there to guide them into the new perspectives they would need. Her little ponies didn't worry about the future on the same kind of scale she did, nor did they think of what would happen to the foals scampering around their hooves when it came to the children's old age, as the older would usually pass before the younger. That was the way of the world, after all. Telling the bearers, or whatever they were now, would put that weight on their shoulders much sooner than if they were to figure it out themselves. They would find themselves having to worry and plan for things years, decades, or even centuries down the line from day one instead of day 10,000. At the same time, it would allow them to prepare. Telling them would let Twilight and her friends stop wasting precious days simply lounging around, fighting with loved ones, or doing a million other silly things that ponies did to eat up time because of one reason or another. Armed with the foreknowledge, they could spend every second of every day with those that they felt close to. Because they would know that each second that went by was time closer to when they would have to say goodbye to their loved ones forever. But there would be consequences for that foreknowledge. A little voice would constantly whisper in her ear that their families would one day be dead, and they would continue on. It was a weight Celestia knew all too well, and it stopped her from growing as close as she would have liked to several ponies throughout the years. If Celestia were to remain silent, things would certainly be better in the now. There would be no worries, and no little voice in the back of their heads constantly reminding them that every second that went by was one step closer to never seeing their families again. They could relax and enjoy simply living life, because they would think there wouldn't always be a tomorrow for every pony, and they had no need to wonder about what would happen centuries down the line, or how much they would regret decisions of eons past. But, on the other hand, just because ponies like Rainbow Dash, Rarity, and Applejack didn't know just how long they would outlive their little sisters, just because they would be able to not worry about things like seeing the foals that trotted at their heels grow old while they remained the same, it didn't mean they wouldn't resent Celestia for not telling them later on. That particular realization brought her to a completely different line of thought. Was she doing this for them? Or herself? Immortals could carry grudges for a long time, and Celestia was more than a little worried of what a single pony out of the 6 who defeated Tirek while he had been next to unstoppable could do. The magic they held was beyond all the unicorns, pegasi, and alicorns in Equestria. It was more than possible that a single one of the 6 stood head and shoulders above the alicorn of the sun when it came to raw magic power, and even Celestia didn't know what kind of new abilities the magic of friendship had given them. And as much as it hurt to admit, she was afraid of them if they were brought to anger. Part of her called the notion silly. Celestia had seen the 5 other ponies since Twilight had come across them, watched them, and laughed at their antics from afar. In truth, she felt closer to those 6 mares than any other pony in Equestria, save her sister. And she knew that despite everything that had transpired between them, never once had they turned to violence against one they considered friend. But then, never before had they faced such a problem, and the question of just how much friendship they held for Celestia was also in doubt. Respect and admiration? Yes. Celestia was their princess, their ruler, the pony who raised the sun, and whom some ponies considered a deity, despite her mortal roots. She had ruled Equestria for 1,000 years, and sacrificed the one she loved most of all for its safety. Friendship? Well, that was the question. But it was neither here nor there. Celestia refocused her mind on the 6 ponies in the projection before her, on what was important, and made her decision on what to do. And that was Would You Like to Know About Forever? I enjoyed it. It was a good read. You can tell that she is having to make a tough decision. The pacing in this, even though it's hardly really, anything happened, it's really just a line of thought. And I enjoy a story like that. I enjoy stories like, the name has escaped me right now. I know Scribbler did a reading of it, but point is, I like a story like this. It's basically just a line of thought. It's not even really a story, but it's still well written, and I still enjoyed it. There isn't really much to it. It's well written, I like it, it's enjoyable, and it's definitely got a dark-ish atmosphere. It's not super dark, it's not like grim dark terribleness. Well, I shouldn't say that. I like grim dark, it's interesting to me, but It's not like grim dark, like uber dark, asylum, crazy. I could be a schizophrenic, like that stuff. But it is still slightly dark, and I enjoy that. It's it's a hard decision she's having to make. I think I already said this, but it's enjoyable. And the best part, I think, in my opinion, is that she, well, no, not she, but well, maybe a she, the writer leaves it vague at the end, and I really like that. I said the same thing at the end of A Timely Encounter. Go listen to that. It's a good story. Or just read it on your own if you don't like my readings. But, yeah, I really like when it's left vague. You don't know if she's telling them or not. And I like that in a story. It leaves it up to the reader to decide. And I love that in a story because it inspires other fan works. And sure, it could still inspire other fan works anyways, but it's more likely to inspire creativity, to like finish it off, to come up with sequels that aren't official to the actual story. And I like that. It allows for the reader to be a bit creative. And I admit some of the readers may not be all that great at writing, but some of them are really good at writing. That's why they're on this site, FimFiction, and I enjoy that in a story. It leaves it vague so that the reader can come up with more possibilities, and I love that. I just love it so much. Anyway, that was Would You Like to Know About Forever? Anyways, that's it. That's all I have to say. If you have any suggestions for short stories or multi-chapters that you want me to read, put them in the comments. If you like this fic, then like it on FimFiction and like the video if you like the reading. But again, make sure you like this on FimFiction if you actually like the fic, or if you just like every fic you read, like me, because I do that, in case I want to read them again or do a reading of them later. But make sure that if you liked my reading of this, like the video, and especially like the fiction, the fanfic on FimFiction, because this author definitely deserves the like. I can't stress this point enough. I don't care as much if you like this video as if you like the fanfic on FimFiction, because the author deserves it more than I do. I just sit there and read. Honestly, I'm ratting on myself at this point, but make sure you like the fic. I'm having a hard time talking today, so I'm gonna stop recording now. Till then, this is me signing out. Peace! I was weak.